Good morning, Mr. Bryant. Thank you for being here. I really want to first say I really enjoyed the lesson that you had. Very well thought out. We are going to cover a few things. I'm going to go through the actual walkthrough form, show you what I wrote down, explain. I'm going to, give all of the feedback that I have, and then we're going to open it up for some questions at the end. Okay. So give me just some time of yours, and we will get started right now. All right. So you can see here at the top, it definitely says that we're not going to observe all of the teaching elements that are listed below. We were only in there. I was only in there for 10 minutes. So in that time frame, we're not really going to be able to see all of the things that are going on in the classroom. So please don't be alarmed if there's something that you know that you did that's not checked off, okay? Because I'm not going to be able to see every single thing during a walkthrough. Okay, that's more of what the observation is for. Okay, so what I saw the students doing, they were sitting at their desk. At the very beginning, you spoke to them and you asked them to speak to their partner about what conductivity was. And then from there, they went into an experiment using the tools that you had provided with them and their computer. Okay, what you were doing, you were instructing from the front of the room. Um, you did move around, but it wasn't more until later in the second half of the lesson. But you did move around the room towards the end of the lesson. Okay, so domain two instruction, this is what I did see. I did see that the content was presented clear and appropriate. You were talking about conductivity. So it seemed like the kids actually had a really good grasp from the beginning when you asked them to discuss with their partner. They had a really good grasp of what conductivity was. So you did have a prior lesson about this. So it seemed like they really got a hold of what the information was. Okay, it used relative teaching methods, aids, materials. You were doing an experiment. You had them with their computers. So you did use relevant materials. Again, it was clear, precise. It was very simple. You gave them instruction by instruction. And so it was very simple and clear. And then you did ask them higher level questions. So you did ask them what they thought or what color the light had turned or what was happening or what they thought was happening. So it actually made them process their own thoughts. And so that's why I put higher level of thinking. Okay. And so, domain three, which is your learning environment, you had a very well respected classroom, and so it was very safe for the kids to be able to learn. And then it was very balanced. They were grouped into partners, and so the kids worked well together. And you had one working off the computer and one working off of the experiment, and so it really made them work together as a group. And then you can also tell that your procedures and routines were very clear from the very beginning. When you stood in front of the class and you said good morning, they said good morning back. You could definitely tell that there was procedures that were there. Okay. So a couple of things that I did write down. Okay. So again, the lesson was very thought out. It was very student centered, which I love about experiments. It gives the kids the ability um, to run the class. To I know that you were instructing them, but they were actually getting to do the work. The classroom was very organized and well structured. The only concern was that the noise level of the students while you were giving instruction. And so you did correct that behavior, but you continued on with instruction, knowing that kids weren't listening. And so that was again after instruction, you did make a comment. And so I would definitely say that you understood that they were talking and that maybe they weren't quite listening. And so you did understand that part and you corrected the behavior. But I'm not sure that you corrected it early enough. So that was the only thing that I saw of concern. Besides what we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. So Shrink's instructions were very clear. You gave an allotted amount of time to complete each step. And so the kids that were actually paying attention and were on top of each instruction, they were right there with you because you gave enough time, you talked them through it, you worked with them, and you made sure that each kid or each group was working on what they were supposed to be working on. You definitely monitored the classroom very well from the front of the room. Okay. So that leads me into the areas of improvement. So while the instruction is taking place, walk around the room and make sure everybody's on the same page. There was quite a few times where I heard your co-teacher say, "We'll get you caught up here in just a few minutes." Had you positioned yourself in a room where you could see everybody's computer screen, you could see everybody's hands, you would be able to know which kids are behind or which kids are already taking the steps ahead. Okay. And so you just don't want to you want to make sure that we don't leave kids behind because then they're trying to that's their sole for their that is their sole focus is trying to get caught up, and so they're focusing on that task instead of focusing on the task at hand, and so they're already steps behind, and which is making them have to work even faster and try to understand what you're presenting and where they're at in the lesson. And so I don't see why taking a few seconds here and there would really be um, bad in a sense of just taking that time and making sure that each individual group is on the same page, making sure they're all on the same step. Everybody's logged into their computer. Everybody's opened up their package and got everything out of their red bag. They've got the cord, they plugged in the cord correctly. And that just comes from monitoring the classroom. That comes from walking around the classroom and just making sure having your eyes on every piece of the puzzle so that you don't leave them behind. Because if you do leave them behind, again, they may not be paying attention to what the next instruction is. And so that leads them into talking to the group next to them or talking to the group in front of them, trying to figure out what the next step is. And so there becomes part of that noise level, and you're trying to give instruction, they're trying to ask questions, and so because they're trying to get caught up while you're trying to move on, and it just causes a ruckus for very brief. I mean, it doesn't cause ruckus for a very long time. It's very brief in its nature. And so that's the only thing is just kind of making sure that everybody's moving step by step with each other, especially when you're in an experiment, because group A over here and group B over here, group B can be ahead and they can see something and be completely in awe of something, and then you've completely lost group A because they don't understand why they're not getting the same results. Well, it's because they didn't have each part of the instruction done the right way. And so that would be my only area of improvement. I think you monitored your classroom very well. The kids have a great respect for you. And so I don't see that um, that there's anything of concern when it comes to the actual instruction part of it. However, just kind of how you present the information. It's very, this was a very in depth, and you connected it to prior learning. And so it was a very good, I'm going to guess from the looks of it, from the sounds of it, it's a very good closure piece to conductivity. Let's just make sure that we keep everybody together so that we don't lose anybody, and that we make sure that everybody's moving at the same pace. But overall, it was a very, very good experiment. I think the kids learned a lot from the experiment. I think that they had fun with the experiment. And so, again, it was very thought out. The kids did it themselves. And so it was fun. They got to do something other than just read a book or do a worksheet. So I think it was a very, very thought out lesson. I'm very impressed by the structure of the lesson. However, let's just think about ways to make it better. Okay, so now we're just gonna go into a couple of questions that I have, and then I'll turn it over to you to answer. Okay, so the first question I have, and we talked about it just a minute ago, is why is moving around the room during instruction beneficial to us as teachers? Okay, yes, ma'am. I think that moving around the room is better for instruction because, again, like you said, we can really see what step each kid is on. We can really see if I have to stop and help a kid, or if I have to redirect some students because they've got off track. Just really being able to see every piece that's going on. I would be able to see computer screens. I would be able to see kids in their hands doing the experiments. I would be able to see each group writing whatever they have to write down on the worksheet. I would really be able to see if I position myself in the right spot in the classroom, really being able to see each individual group. That way, again, like you said, not leaving anybody behind. It's just one of those that I wanted to make sure that we got the whole experiment done. And so I just kept going. And I realized that now, looking back at it, some kids were behind, some kids didn't understand, some kids weren't able to log into their computer. And so it was really tough for some kids to get caught up. And that explains the noise level as to why I had to make that corrective action. So I think just positioning myself would really give me a a good idea of what each group is doing. Okay, greatness. Okay, you can walk and you can talk throughout the whole lesson. Okay, you can be walking in and out the aisles while you're giving instruction. Okay, you have your materials in your hand. You can be walking around, making sure that each group is where they're supposed to be on each individual instruction that you're giving. So, I really do think that the position of where we are gives a great effect of the overall outcome of our lessons. And so I know that sometimes we don't think about it. Sometimes we just think, okay, we're gonna stand up here because we think that kids adapt better if we're at the front of the classroom. But in truth and reality, they're gonna adapt better if you're walking around, because then they're like, oh, he can see everything that we're doing because he's moving around the room. And so I think that it's just beneficial because, again, you can see every detail. You can see every move that a kid makes. You can see just every instructional piece of the classroom. Okay, so just finding that happy medium, finding that position in the classroom. Okay. Um, so tell me one thing that you think could have made your lesson better. Okay. Um, at the beginning, I don't think I took enough time actually explaining what we were going to be doing. I kind of just said that we were going to do an experiment and that I needed them to pay attention to instructions and work on instructions with me, but I didn't really explain what the experiment was going to be, what the experiment was going to show. I kind of just made the connection to conductivity and just expected the kids to know it from there. And so I think that that was something that I definitely could have done better, is bringing the overall objective at the beginning of the class, rewording it or extending it to make it a little bit more of understanding. So a little bit more of, okay, this is what we're going to do today. This is how it's going to be done. this is the product that we should be able to do. That way the kids have an understanding of what it's going to be. So then at the end, it makes it easier for them to understand and draw a conclusion from it. And so just making sure that they get every piece of what is going to be done and why it's going to be done. So giving them that why feature. Awesome. So yes, I definitely believe that the beginning of the lesson could have been done a little bit differently. I would say that making a connection to real world, real life. Um, you did have them speak to each other at the beginning, which I thought was awesome. And I probably would have had a couple of groups share just because everybody has a different opinion. And so I definitely probably would have had a couple of different groups share out their responses instead of just one. I definitely would have changed that just so that you could get a variety. And then you could have bounced off of those and said, yes, so conduction is, through electricity. And so you could have made those connections at that point. You could have bounced off of an answer and given them, you could have gone back to the teachings before because you did address that you had already been learning about conductivity. And so you did tie in prior learning to the reason that you were doing what you were doing. However, I think that there was a stronger connection that could have been made. Um, I think that you could have tied in examples that you had done in the prior learnings. You could have tied in and just given them visual representations of what conductivity was. You could have given examples of a hot pot on a stove whenever you touch it. There's a lot of different things that you could have given them in reference to allowing them to make that visual connection before they started the experiment. And so I do believe that taking that little extra time at the beginning, and I realized that you didn't really know how long the experiment was going to take. You didn't really know, what questions were going to be asked, how long it was going to take to log in, how long it was take, to get things rocking and rolling. So I completely understand that. But I really think that that strong connection at the beginning is going to be very, very beneficial long term because the kids are going to get that understanding and they're going to be able to know what it is that they're looking for while they're doing this experiment. Because I think if they have that connection piece, they're really going to be able to understand at the end of the experiment, because the experiment is the visual connection. It's the visual of, okay, this is what conductivity does. And so I really think that that is something that is beneficial, that they already have that visual or they already have those examples, and that they can just tie in and make that connection at the end. And so I really think that you made some valid points. I think that we have some things to take back to the classroom and help us be better. I know again that in the middle of the lesson, it's really hard to make those changes. And so, really think whenever you're getting that lesson put together, really think, okay, is this something that I really need to be walking around the classroom? Do I really need to be visually in mode of this is what I have to be able to see everything that each kid is doing, whether we're on the computer or we're doing an experiment or we're writing on paper. And just position yourself, find a way to position yourself in the classroom that will make that beneficial for you. Okay. And again, that position can be in the back of the room. It can be by the windows. It can be by the chalkboard. Okay. It can be in the front of the room. If you can see everything that a kid is doing in that lesson from the front of the room, then that's your position. Okay. But I think in this one, since kids did have computers, then maybe the back of the room would have been, or just walking in between the aisles, but I think I think if you are leading the next step in instruction, and you really want them to focus on something, the front of the room was your best bet. But after that instructional piece was given, where are we going from there? Okay, and really, really tie in, trying to give those kids that real life connection that makes it easier for them to understand why are we doing what we're doing. Okay, and so, again, this is the walkthrough form. So I really, really liked the lesson. I really thought it was well thought out, and that the kids got an understanding of what conductivity was through this experiment. There are some things, again, that we're going to work on for the next one, and we are going to continue to work together. So, again, don't think that, I really, really thought that this was well done. Okay, it was a well done class. Okay, so just work on those few things, and we'll continue these walkthroughs, and we'll get better. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen. In that process, do you have any questions for me? Do you have any comments, concerns, anything you want to ask? No, ma'am. Alrighty, well, I definitely appreciate your time. If you have any questions that come up, please email me, and I can stop by, or we can talk about it. We can have another Zoom call if you need to. Just any instructional piece or just any questions that you might have, just reach out. I'm here for you. I'm here to help. But thank you for your time today, and we will see you in the next walkthrough. Have a great afternoon.